Hi there. So today it's all about sheep bands. I have recently become enamored of these sheep bands. They've been around for quite some time. Popular. They were really popular for a while, and I never had the courage to try them. And finally, I have started exploring weaving again and trying to be more adventurous. And I did this one, which is on the Inca loom, which is the original way that I know that it was done, with string heddles, and it's this is Krokbragd, or actually it's turned Krokbragd because Krokbragd is a weaving technique. Gosh, there's hairs everywhere. Where it is weft based, so the weft is packed on with the packed onto the warp, and you can't see the warp. But when you do it on an Inca loom, it's turned on its side and it's warp faced, so they call it turned Krokbragd. And this is really fun and it's really neat. But then you wind up with a band like this, and I was hoping to use it for a leash. And to me, I always worry about these floats and a leash catching and being not really nice for the long term. And you could gosh darn dogs, you could back this with fabric. Probably you could, depending on your dog, you could do it with ribbon, or you could do it with webbing, or you could do it with whatever, another band. But they're kind of a lot of work to me for a leash, so I didn't really want to invest more in them, and I was looking for alternatives. So then I saw on the internet that super cool, you can do it with tablets. So these are cheap that were done with tablets, and it's still Krokbragd. So you still get a little bit of a different edge because of the weaving structure. It's really impossible to make that flat, just so you know. So you get this kind of a lacier, wavier edge, which I figure just embrace it because it's apparently that's the way it is going to be. So you do these little sheep, and the nice thing about this is neater, but it still is, well, it's little rectangles with two colors, three, and it is not little sheep. So not really digging the back on this one either, even though it's nice and neat. So it left me with the same problem of having to back it or double it. Could totally double it, but you'd have to sew up the sides. So, and not totally a fan of sewing. So, yeah. So I did, my first homemade cards were a bust. They were awful. I did it all wrong. To me, my problem with my first homemade cards is I put my holes, thinking to make the sheds bigger, I put my holes way out, and the cards just caught on the threads and wouldn't turn, and they were terrible. So let that be a lesson. This pattern came out of Candace Crockett. I think it's Candace Crockett tablet weaving book. There are actually patterns for cards, just so you know. And I just cut them out. Cereal boxes would probably be better because this is lightly corrugated. But this was the best cardboard that I had available at the time in order to make 20 cards, which is how many cards this pattern takes. I did not figure out how to put this little border on because I didn't want to reinvent the wheel at the moment, although I do kind of like the fancy border better. But this is the tablet pattern that's on Daedalus.com, so you can find the 3-hole pattern there. This is actually my second sheep band, though, because the first one called for triangular cards, and at that moment, I didn't want to make cards, and I didn't have cards. And so what I did was say, well, there's 3 holes in 4-hole cards. Why can't you just do a sheep band with 3 holes? Turns out you can. So this is actually my first tablet woven sheep band. I just haven't finished it yet because I got all excited and made cards and yada, yada, yada. So if you'd like to see, this is, someone else has already done this, but let me put this here and see if I can set you up to see how this works. So Krokbragd is basically turned Krokbragd with tablets. Oh my goodness, sorry about this. Sorry, okay. It's basically, it's 3 sheds. So you have A, B, you have your A threads, your B threads, and your C threads. And your first shed is A, and it's basically the green that separates your sheep. And then you turn it to B, and this just works just fine and dandy on these cards. And that's the first side of your sheep. And then you turn it to C, depending on which way your cards are worked. This could be forwards or backwards. It's just A, B, C in order. A, B, C, and this is the middle of your sheep. And then, so you've gone A, B, C, so then you go backwards. So you go B, because you're at C, so you go B, back, and that's your other half of your, the other outside of your sheep. And A, which is your divider between sheep. So it's 5 sheds, basically, and you have your whole little pattern, which is grass or background, side of sheep, middle of sheep, side of sheep, grass or background. And that's all there is to it. Which works perfectly fine with 4 hold cards. So you don't have to buy any, you don't have to make any, just use your 4 hold cards, feel intrepid, and go for it. You can make a nice little sheep band. But my problem was the same here as with the other one. The back is rectangles, which wasn't going to work for my application. And I didn't want to sew rubbing on it because I'm not a sewist. And so I thought, hey, Krokbragd only uses 3 threads. What about 6 hold cards and double weave? So I had this epiphany when I was brushing dogs the other day, and I ordered myself a whole set of things on Amazon because that was the quickest way I could get them and I wouldn't have to make them because I was out of cardboard from the triangular ones. And voila, last night I warped it up and look at this. I got sheep on both sides. I didn't do any border on this this band. I just did the sheep because I wasn't completely convinced that my logic in my head was telling me true, but it did, and it works. So this is the same process. It's just that you have 2 sides. So this is shed A, right? So you got, I labeled my cards A, B, C, because this is what I wanted to do with them. And see, you have a shed on the bottom here, which is your A, bink. And so you go through the one side and then you go through the other, B, place your thread, and then you're going to turn to B, depending on whichever direction your B is. It might be forward, it might be back, depending on how you thread it. It's no big deal. Just go A, B, get your B threads. This is a little fiddly. I find that if your tension is a little looser, it does better and you clear the sheds easier. So there's your B shed. This is the side of the sheep. See, side of the sheep. Put your shuttle through, and then you're going to go on the bottom. Now this is the tricky part, because if you don't clear the bottom shed, you wind up with little sheep on your back side that don't look as good as sheep on your front side. Like right there, I've got a one-legged sheep, and there I've got a black part that goes in the middle, and there's I've got a sheep. So you have to be, it's a little fiddly. It's certainly not a production technique. You know, you wouldn't be making oodles of these to sell or anything, at least not the way I'm learning. But still, if you have a herding dog or a flock of baby doll sheep or something, well, this would be awesome to make a little band and make something that's double-sided. So maybe a sheep leash. How cool would that be? So C, See is your last one. It helps if you flip these cards because that lets the little ones that are hung up, I find, release. It's not my technique. Someone else did it. I saw it on YouTube. I didn't learn that on my own. So then you pick up your shed. Just make sure that you get right now I'm in C, so only the C sheds, only the shed. This is the middle of the sheep. So it's his little head, and the bottom shed, look at that, is really nice. It helps if you can be flexible enough to look at it. So you're going around with your shuttle on the top, on the bottom. On the top, it goes around. Okay, so now that I'm to C, I'm going to go back to B because it's A, B, C, B, A. And pick up that shed, and this is the other side of the sheep. Three sides. I mean, three picks for a sheep. And see how I did on the bottom. It's a little harder to see. I find that if it's a little hard to see, you can tilt it forward and it opens it better. So sometimes, so you have to tilt this one forward a little bit for the top and this one forward a little bit for the bottom, is what I found. Then you push your thread, and it's a little tricky when you start, but I just don't worry about the beginning of a band myself, because most of the time I don't finish them with fancy flourishes or anything. So for me, it really doesn't matter. I usually just let my beginning of my band be messy, and then because it's all about what works for you. So if you need to be finicky, it just take longer. So then, after you've done your sheep, you do your background. Boom, that sets your sheep apart. So they don't, you're like little Minecraft sheep. It's funny. Although they probably existed well before Minecraft, but okay. And then there's your bottom shed, and voila, 2 sheep. Buddy. Stop, that was me. Okay, he barks at everything. So, there you go. It is double-sided, tablet woven, turned Krokbragd with 6-fold tablets. Woohoo! And there's a leash. Oh, and another thing I learned, which could be really cool with this because there's a little pocket in the middle. Because this is round, right? Oh my gosh, I just had another thought. I gotta hold on to that one. These holes in the middle, you can actually run like a filler through. So if one of these middle threads, if you ran a thicker cord through, it could actually be in the middle and you could be weaving around it, which could be really, really cool. And then I just had another thought. Because it's a tube, let me show you. Because this is actually essentially a tube because it's hollow in the middle. And it's double-sided. It's not woven together like some double-sided. It's actually, look, it's actually hollow. You could probably, this is just a thought, do cards on the outside edges that were border cards that weren't part of the Krokbragd, that were just borders, and that would be flat. And that would keep this from, when you're using it, doing that, which isn't bad, but it's not your sheep. Just a thought. Now I have to try that. Happy weaving. Have a great day. Explore more.